thousands, in the millions, and we will be. Because it starts right here.
Guilty!
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio. I'm your host, Dani Abdullah, here with my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. So Akili Shakur, the wife of Shaka A. Shakur, joins the show this week. Shaka is a new African political prisoner, a revolutionary organizer, a theorist, and a movement builder who has been held captive by the state of Indiana since 2002. At the time of this recording, we will be showcasing Shaka's documentary here at the Indy Liberation Center. And honestly, every time Akili is here and speaks, it is absolutely amazing. I remember the first time I met Akili, I was super weird, which is shocking, I know, to those who know me. But I told her I felt like the ancestors wanted me to meet her, and I still feel that way. And honestly, if you meet her, when you hear her speak, you will absolutely understand why. So I hope you all enjoy the discussion as much as I did. But before we get into it with Akili, let's get into it with Derek and the Naptown Breakdown. What's happening in Naptown this week, Derek?
All right. Well, first, most notably, a significant people's victory yesterday, Monday, September 22nd, at the City County Council. The people have successfully defeated one of the largest corporations in the world. Google's data center will not be proceeding as planned in Franklin Township. So salute to the Citizen Action Coalition, all the grassroots organic leaders, everybody who was out in the streets, the people from Franklin Township and beyond for making this happen, and the counselors Michael Paul Hart, when he announced it at the overflow room even, there were people protesting outside, and when he announced that they were withdrawing it, he was notified by their lawyer that they were withdrawing the proposal for the rezoning and the plan. Everybody just erupted in applause. So victories are much less common than defeats, or I should say defeats are much more common than victories. And so we should really cherish this and celebrate it, but also remain on guard, because this doesn't mean that they won't necessarily submit a new one or a different one, and the data center trend will keep growing. So we need to really combat that as we really continue to combat the use of AI in general, and the undemocratic way in which it's sort of developed. And also, of course, AES, energy monopoly here, is still going to be increasing, or requesting increasing rates for consumers, even though we now will not have to compensate for the portion that Google would have to pay for its data center. So we need to be on the lookout for that. One of the utility commissions has recommended against it already, but that doesn't mean that it won't go through. But the rate hike should be it'll be like $30 on average for every household in Indianapolis or Indiana, really. And the allocation of costs forces residential customers to basically pay higher, a much higher percent increase than commercial or industrial users. So in other words, it's like a disproportionate burden on people, workers, and not on the bosses who can actually afford it. And right across the street from us, really, there was a gun found at Herron High School they call it Indy's near North Side. And that was on September 11th. And they have a clear backpack policy. There's an investigation. A student has been arrested so far, said it wasn't an intended threat to the school or whatever. And regardless of what happens, of course, people are, upset. And schools have never actually been, violence-free in the United States. I say that as somebody who teaches history of education. But definitely, guns shouldn't be in schools or places of learning. And the problem, however, is that the solutions that people are, most drawn to, because they're the only ones that seem to be available to us, are to actually bring more guns into school by bringing police into schools, by bringing metal detectors into schools, et cetera. In other words, by increasing the surveillance of students and further transforming schools into prisons. So it's no longer a school-to-prison pipeline. It's really the school functions as a prison. So as this moves forward, we just want to be, really thoughtful about the ways we actually address the root causes of these kinds of acts and incidents. And fortunately, nobody was injured during this incident in Herron School. And then finally, I just do want to mention the Ball State professor who was fired actually, over the mildest remarks over Charlie Kirk's assassination, in which it was literally called it a tragedy, is suing Ball State with the help of the ACLU because this is an attack on, our basic right to free speech. And so I think that this could be a potential line in the sand that is drawn that ignites the masses into the streets if these attacks on free speech continue, because if there's anything that we are sort of indoctrinated with from day one, growing up in the United States, is that this is like the quote unquote land of the free and free speech and the freedom of the press and all that nonsense. And while, it's always been free speech for some, this is taking it to a level where it's clear that they are not interested in that constitutional right. And I think that most people, the vast majority of people who grow up in the U.S., who have grown up in the U.S., who have come to the U.S., are outraged about this. And so we need to be on the lookout for ways to agitate against this and be ready to mobilize for this.
First off, shout out to all the people who have been showing up for, in protest of the Google data center. I know comrades have been showing up, people who are not in an organization, individuals have been showing up because, right, it involves all of us, right? It impacts all of us.
KTFTD.
And, this is, like Derek said, right, this is a victory for the people. It's not over, but it is absolutely a victory for the people. And it shows, it's a great reminder for people of what we can do when we come together. There's been so many people, regardless of political affiliation, who have been yeah, we did it, and that's what it's about, is coming together and defeating capitalism, getting rid of these big corporations who are literally stealing resources from us.
Yeah, and if I can just say too, that's really it. This is the power of the people. It's not a major victory in the sense that we haven't radically transformed the city overnight, but we have defeated a proposal by a massive corporation. Just think, if we can do that, really, there were salute to everybody involved, but it wasn't a mass movement. It wasn't like the summer of 2020. It was hundreds and hundreds of people, and not to devalue that in any way, but rather to show that even with that relatively small number of people relative to the population of Indianapolis or Marion County, what we can do. So just imagine what we could do if all approximately 1 million residents got together, organized, and made a plan and acted on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think as a parent of school-age children, but also as a therapist to human beings. I actually have a client who goes to Herron, which I had found out about Herron not from the news, but because another parent whose child goes to my kid's school was talking to me about it and was like, yeah, my kid didn't go to school today because there was a gun at Herron yesterday. And I was like, what? And in a country that has kind of just become desensitized to violence towards children, just as a human being, actually, it's just concerning what happened at Herron, regardless of if the kid, I know there's different stories of what is going on there, but regardless if the kid was there to harm others or not. Kids are scared. Children are scared. Teachers are scared. And so a real conversation, like Derek was saying, a real conversation about like, how do we keep people safe needs to be had. My children, my beautiful little Black boys, do not feel comfortable with cops. So that is not something that would make them feel safe. That's not something that would make me feel like my children are safe. More cops at their school. There's already I'm not supposed to cuss on here. There's already a cop.
Again, every show.
There's already a cop at my kid's school. And, God, I hate that dude.
Excuse me, school resource officer, I believe they're called.
Whatever.
No.
It's all the same. But I can't stand that guy. He's an a-hole. He's a jerk, as my 11-year-old would say. He's a jerk. But yeah, like a real conversation needs to be had about like how do we keep ourselves safe. To the point about like Herron, the reason why the kid was caught and got kicked out was because the kids were like, hey, this guy has a gun, right? Like the kids came together and were like, this guy has a gun. What is happening here? And he cocked it in my friend's face, right? Like it was the kids coming together and was like trying to keep each other safe.
Seems like they saw it, you know what I mean? Like, but they're not taught, they're not like presented it. It's not presented to them like that. Like, hey, great job. Like you all protected each other as a community, right? And but really that shows you that like we have the capacity to do this without the cops, you know? And also, I mean, should we really be surprised that kids are bringing guns to school when, like, you know, there's been an ongoing genocide against the Palestinians that's been like openly sponsored and backed by their government for over 2 years now? I mean, well, almost 2 years. I mean, the genocide, of course, has been a longer project, but you know, the latest iteration of it. Like, how is that okay? But like, that's okay. But you bring a gun to school, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, think about kids in Gaza. Think kids in Palestine. You know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's really a cultural shift that needs to happen.
And to the point of like making it more like the school to prison pipeline, right? They have the clear book bag policy at Herron, like a lot of schools do, and the kid had it in his book bag, you know. So like that didn't actually do anything, right? Like. So that's not the solution. The solution is not to institutionalize them even more than they already are. But like, I would love to talk to the kids at Herron about what do they think can be done. And there's already kids at the school who have ideas, right, of what can be done to keep them safe. Kids are smart. They're so smart. So we got to listen to them because they know. So that is it for the Naptown Breakdown. We will be back with Derek and Akili.
And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. We're honored to be joined today by Akili Shakur. Akili, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to see you in such good spirits, too. So Akili Shakur, in addition to being the wife of our dear comrade behind enemy line, Shaka A. Shakur, is one of the founders of Saving Our Families, a retired professor of sociology and former director of the Veterans Program at Purdue Northwest, and a founding member of the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, a nationwide 501c3 headquartered here at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, but with chapters in Virginia, the Bay Area, and many more to come. So again, welcome to the show, Akili. And I'm wondering what brings you into town today?
Well, besides my invite to always come home, since you're here, I came down because we wanted to talk about the launching of the new book that Shaka has coming out, and to kind of talk about some of the things that a lot of the people around the country now are experiencing with the Interstate Compact. Issues such as those are the things that has me in town this week.
Yeah, we've talked about the Interstate Compact, and actually had Shaka talk about it too, and it's something we addressed in a documentary. And it's one thing to know about it, and we've heard a bit about Shaka's experience, but it doesn't just impact, the prison system, mass incarceration doesn't impact those who are on the inside, it impacts all of us. And I know in particular, it impacts the immediate family, such as yourself. I wonder if you could tell me and our listeners about, maybe a recent example of just how that impacts you.
I wrote a piece on doing time too, and that was regarding how families are also doing time when you have a loved one that's incarcerated, and for it to be state legislation that now you can take individuals who have been convicted on the state level and treat them like they are on the federal level and transfer them all the way across the country. It makes it very, very difficult for you to physically stay in contact with that individual. The time that it takes to go across country, the amount of money that it takes, the problems that you have with even trying to get visits over computers. It gets to be a bit much, and they don't seem to take into effect the consequences that comes out of it, especially if there's children involved. Children have classes and they have to be in school, so they're not always available to do the video visits. They would have a weekend that maybe they could go and visit. That's not possible because you have to buy flight tickets or you have to buy bus tickets. You have to make days of planning. You were talking about an incident that happened with me. This has just been recently, I had called and followed all the little rules and regulations that they say for setting up your visit for your loved one. And I had gotten it cleared that I could come in and I would end up with a 2-day visit and I would get 4 hours per day. Now, mind you, I am going from Indiana all the way to Virginia. I'm flying to Virginia. I get there. No one has told me that, number one, that they're on lockdown. There's nothing that says, cancel that, the prison is locked down. I get there, and I'm calling to make sure what's going on. All of a sudden, there's no visits. And I'm like, excuse me, this visit has been cleared by your upper regiment of individuals, said that I can come in. Well, no, we're not having any visits. So then we have to call around all over again to just see what has transpired. Well, because they said that, okay, it's Friday, you can come in, but you're only going to come in for 2 hours. And I have flown from Indiana to Virginia, rented a car, had to get a hotel room, all of these things that you have to put into your budget in order to be able to see your loved one just to get there. And when they do straighten it out, you're only going to see them for 2 hours, 1 day. They canceled the Saturday. They let me do the Friday. And then that Saturday, my plane ticket is not leaving back out until the following day. So had I been traveling with children, that would have tripled the budget of what it's going to cost. And when you get there, your visit, it was horrible. I must say it was. There was no way for privacy to say anything. I almost felt like I was in a 3-way conversation.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably more. Your feeling was probably correct there, given the monitoring of Shaka's conversations. And before that, when is the last time that you had seen Shaka in the flesh?
Oh God, it had been, I want to say 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years before that I had flown out there. He was at a different facility then, and so I got a chance to see him that one day for 4 hours.
Yeah, and so I think it was something like $2,000 or more that you had spent for 2 hours to see your lawfully wedded husband.
My lawfully wedded husband of 25 years.
Of which, the institution of marriage is supposed to be so sacrosanct in this country, right? I mean...
Oh, please don't talk about how,
I'm just saying, it's like, it just shows the hypocrisy of it.
It does.
It applies, it's sacrosanct for some.
What do they say? Till death do we part. And yet they part you in this life to make you think like it's death, because I think the object is to separate the person who is behind the wall to make them feel like they have died and to disrupt the family. Now, you're pushing that we're putting all these families together, or we want to keep them together no matter what. And they also know what it takes for an individual to do time and how to keep that family together. And yet you put all these obstacles to kill the family, and then you blame the individual. Oh, well, see, this is the breakup of the family.
Right.
No, it's the state steps in, and they put obstacles in the way so that you are almost destined to break the family up. I'm fortunate. I'm a fighter. Shaka's a fighter. So, we're not breaking up just because the judge said so.
Right.
I mean, they said that we were married, so now deal with it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and, I was on a panel this weekend about Prison Reimagined, and we were talking about this, and somebody put it like this, like, basically they have your family hostage too.
Oh, most definitely.
And even as a friend of Shaka's and, like corresponding with him, I mean, you got to pay for the stamps, the phone calls, the visits, even the video visits. You clear your schedule, and this is nothing compared to the inconvenience you go through, but it's regular. I show up, and all of a sudden, it's canceled, no reason.
And you're not able to really talk.
Yes.
Because you're always looking to be sure that you don't say a word that is going to be misconstrued, or they can take it and use it against your loved one, and they'll tell you everything is being monitored. And who wants to really try and have a conversation about what's going on in everyday life? And you've got this third party that's sitting here taking notes, every little thing. And there has been times when they have cut the phone call off just in the middle of it. One word, boom. All of a sudden, there's a wasted phone call. Yeah. So it's usually, hi, how you doing? How you holding up? He can't tell me everything that's going on. And I have to be careful how I ask questions, because if they misconstrue it and think that, he's coming after us and it's going to affect us in some kind of way, then there's retribution that he has to pay once the visits, whether they be video visits, phone visits, or in-person visits, he still has to stay there.
Right. And so, he can't even really express his true emotions, because they can then go and tell guards, for example, that, he's experiencing this emotion. So, you can take advantage of that.
Yeah. I told you we're doing the campaign, Even Lions Cry Too. Behind the wall, that's not the place for you to be and have to shed tears. And we talk about, the code word now is mental health. Everybody is tossing this word around, and yet you're not really dealing with issues of mental health. And you talk about recidivism, and you're treating people like animals. And then when the time is up, you let them out, and then they come back out, and you expect for them to be human again. And they've had years of training of how to survive in the concrete jungle behind the wall. And so what are they supposed to do when stress and frustrations come about? And while they say, you can always, call the hotline. The truth is, you've still got to have some insurance and some money to actually be able to get the services that you're going to need to try and transition, because that transition does not happen behind the wall.
Yeah, they're definitely setting you up. And it's almost, I always say, I'm wondering what mental health is, and if actually it's possible for somebody to be healthy mentally in a world such as ours. And it's almost like if you're mentally healthy, I tend to think something is wrong with you, because it's like, how can you be mentally healthy given all that's happening, genocides, abroad and domestically, so it's really, what are the social conditions that we can create to allow for us to be truly mentally healthy? That's a project I know you're working on, one way of putting it, if I may, that Shaka's working on, that Hear Her Voice is working on, that we're working on. Like, let's create a world where mental health is not an issue.
We have all these code terms, and they attach dollars to them. If it's $1 attached to it, all of a sudden everybody has it. If you take the dollars away, then they will go back and start looking at real issues of what's going to get a person to the point where they're going to be able to have to spend the dollars, Mm-hmm. And so when you look at what they say, this is a mental health issue, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. First, what is your definition of mental health?
Yeah.
Because if you want to know what it feels like to be in prison, I advise everybody, go in your bathroom, close your door, and try and stay in there about 8 hours. And if you can make just 8 hours, because people were having so much frustration just over COVID being in their house and they can move from room to room. Well, there's no room to move to. And when you have no room to move to, you have no privacy, and you're doing this day in, day out, this becomes a way of life, and it stifles the brain because the brain is a muscle, and you have to be able to put things in it to bring out good things. You can't just constantly be on red. They call it post-traumatic stress, and they don't believe that anybody can have post-traumatic stress, I guess, unless you served in a war or, you've got some kind of uniform on. But out here just living, we go through post-traumatic stress, and we do have a few options. But when you're locked up and you're always watching because they don't let up, and this is your reality. So sit in your bathroom and just imagine, I'm going to sit here 8 hours and I'm not going to talk to anybody. Nobody's going to be able to talk to me. Somebody comes by, beat the door. What are you supposed to do? You can't come out. You've committed yourself to 8 hours. Imagine trying to stay in there, 8 months to 20 years.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about so many, prisoners, political prisoners, prisoners of war, and Shaka in particular, is that he's been able to endure this and in a sense, I don't know, overcome is the right word. You have a better word, I'm sure, but not only to keep the struggle moving, but to keep developing new leaders and new fighters, which is why I'm so excited that finally he's going to have a book coming out, through 1804 Books, which is attached to the People's Forum and the Leftward Publishers Network, so it'll have an international reach because, at least from my perspective, after the repression of the Black liberation struggle, the New African liberation struggle in the 70s, really, in many ways, prison is where the theoretical and the organizing work, much of it went. The rest went to the academy, and as a fellow academic, I can say that's where radical theories go to die. And so I think Shaka's really one of the people who's been keeping that tradition moving in theory and in practice. The book is called Manifestations of Thoughts, When the Dragon Comes. Can you just speak anything about that and why, do you agree? Is there anything I said that's incorrect or needs sort of an addition or explanation?
I think you've described it fantastically. When the dragon comes and, that part about your thoughts, because we all live with our thoughts. And if you don't have a way to really put that out there to be able to look at it, and some of the very thoughts that are in the book, those who have been incarcerated and those who work with those that are incarcerated can relate to, because it happens the same way mentally all around the world. If somebody puts you in that situation, what do you do with those thoughts? You can take those thoughts and do something negative, which can harm someone, or you can take those thoughts and you can build with it, which can help someone. And I'm just very proud that he's always taken his thoughts and tried to push forward that whatever it is that he's going through, help people understand so that whatever it takes to get through it, you don't have to succumb to the madness that's being pushed at you. Mm-hmm. And if he did 13 years in solitary, and that in and of itself is a whole different beast, and still to be able to come out and communicate and still understand that I still have something to give. I might have left the streets, but I haven't left the planet. And it's very important that people still be connected to that family unit, because that's what keeps you moving forward. When you don't have anything to lose, then you throw it all up and you say, what do I have to lose? You don't have any support. There's no one writing you. There's no one trying to contact you. There's no one visiting you. What is life? And it makes us start to think, what do we do with our lives daily? We take things for granted, that you can go outside and just breathe. You can walk a block and walk off anxiety or anger.
Or when you're shower every day.
Right. Little things. You can choose what you want to eat, But when that's taken away from you, everything is told to you time and time and time and time again. And there's always a negative outcome if you don't stay on the red line. It's like being back in kindergarten when you tell children, stay in this area right here. Okay, if you step outside of, the consequences can be dire. And this is day in, day out, day in. And you never know when something's going to change because you get used to a rhythm, a pattern, and all of a sudden it changes up. And then one little word can get you transferred all the way across the country. Someone can say, well, I don't like the way you did X, Y, and Z. So how do you put those thoughts down where it's understandable, it's not threatening, it's the truth? And most of us can't deal with our own truths, let alone somebody else telling us our truths, and not to become a victim. And so that's my prayer all the time. Don't let him become the victim.
Yeah.
Let him be able to continue to say what needs to be said, because people need to hear this, especially those who, and I say it all the time for my Christian friends. I always take them back to, I think it's Peter or Paul, who was the biggest murderer in the Bible, in the New Testament, but he was most beloved. Okay, he was forgiven. And with Shaka, there are no bodies.
Right.
Never killed anybody.
No.
So why the hatred when you're talking about conditions that have been put down to keep people having to resort to going back to prison because they can't adjust when they come out? And that's why I'm just so thankful for you guys. You guys put in a lot of work for individuals and their families that are locked up to try and make sure that there is still that connection, that they've not been tossed out, no one cares. Because when people come back and they don't care, everybody is subject to be a victim.
Yeah.
And you guys work hard. You find housing, you find jobs, you're educating, you are putting food on people's plates, you are making people feel wanted and included. How many groups are there that are actually doing the work and not just taking in the funds? And that's something that we don't really talk about.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And it goes both ways. I mean, I remember, in terms of Shaka's writing and just when I first getting to know him asking me my opinion about something he had written. I was just like, what? Why do you care what I think, right? But he genuinely did. He wanted my input. And I was like, wow, that's, so that's that. I mean, to be able to mentor people, collaborate. It's hard enough for those of us on the outside to do because we're individuals and I own this idea or I own this property. And, he's the exact opposite. And so, it is like we do it for the love of the people because, our people have so much creativity in them. It's just the system doesn't let us unleash it, And so that's why I was like, I'm excited for this book to come out, not only because it's Shaka's, the personal, political, theoretical writings that I think will launch a new step forward in the struggle, really. But also because it's it's a glimpse, because he's one of many. And as I always say, Shaka, and as you know well, he's the last thing he wants to do is talk about I'm okay, D. Let's doing the work. What's going on with the work? What's going on with the work? So I think that it's good that we got some personal pieces in there. And yeah, I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a big thing for the movement, and just again, a glimpse of how there's many Shaka Shakurs, and that's who Shaka's fighting for. Obviously his freedom, but
there are so many Shaka Shakurs that are on their way in. There's those that are there. There's those that are coming out, and when you look at it, to be able to truthfully speak from the heart, whether it's good or bad, to be able to put the truth down and not try and hide away from what it is, because every individual, we're social beings, right?
Yep.
And we want to be around people, and if we really love this world that we're in, you want to see it move forward. Well, the system has made us all start to look at, like you said, that it's mine, mine, mine. It's all about me, and it keeps people separated. And it's so much easier to live in harmony with someone than to walk around with all the anger and the division that's espoused to you daily. You're told, oh, this is your enemy. This is your enemy. People are not your enemy. The system is your enemy, because we all suffer. When one goes down, we all are going to feel it in some way. Maybe you won't feel it today, but if if the system can get this person today, look out, because you never can tell when your tomorrow, it might be your turn. And that person's got to come back somewhere. If they're from the community, they're coming back to the community. What do? Do we continue to make this person do time? The state says you have to do X amount of time, then you should be through doing it once they release you. But they release you in a situation where you got to go back to them. Yeah. So it's this revolving door. But if we can stop it, and people can read and see, and you can recognize when someone is struggling, and that individual who's incarcerated, if they read it, they can recognize, hey, I felt this too. You know, you're not alone. None of us are alone. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things we feel, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well put. And so thank you, Akili, for joining us today. I know, you're always willing to sacrifice your time for the struggle in general. And, we really cherish you and Shaka here. I always say, like, Shaka's done so much for the center, for Indianapolis, for the state, for all the way from Virginia, and it's hard to imagine. It's hard to express and articulate. So it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you again for joining us here on Naptown People's Radio.
Thank you all for having me. I'm just humbled, to be exact. I'm like, oh, you want to talk to little old me?
Oh, man.
I don't know what I'm bringing to the conversation, but I do know that you guys have put in mad work, not only for Shaka, but for a lot of others in the state of Indiana, and I can never, ever thank you enough.
Well, thank you. I mean, and we don't do it alone. We do it because, we're connected to other groups, and like you said, it's about unity, and it's about just getting to know people, right? I mean, how many of us know our neighbors? I mean, I live in a residential building of 60 people, and, I'm on the board now, so I know many more of them. But before that, I didn't know the name, people on my floor even. And so it's like, that's how divided we are. And we cannot do this alone, because when I started talking to Shaka, I had never, really done prison. I mean, I'd done something a long time ago, but that was it, And so you all taught us and taught me. And so, yeah, it's a collaborative effort, and it's all about building those networks and, forging that solidarity and that unity, which is a process. It's not a conclusion. So, be on the lookout for that book, Manifestations of Thought, When the Dragon Comes. It's going to be published through 1804 Books. It's available for pre-order now. We'll put it in the show notes, 1804books.com. And we'll also, of course, have it here at the Liberation Center store, which is online and in person. So that's it for this segment, and we will be right back with another closing segment of Naptown People's Radio. And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. Hope you enjoyed that segment with Akili Shakur. So, Dani, before we wrap up today, who gets the Circle City shout-out?
Okay, so today's Circle City shout-out goes to Gina Lee Robbins. So Robbins is an Indianapolis-based visual and teaching artist who creates sculptural objects and installations. Right now, her main focus has been on making sculptures to shed light on the prison system. So this came about after she was driving and noticed Newcastle Prison. So she's not an Indiana native. So she saw this and she thought it looked like a school, but getting closer, she realized that it was a prison. Weird how that happened. So she was wondering what other prisons there were within Indiana. So her sculptures initially were to talk about prisons in Indiana, but realized it did not matter because of people like Shaka A. Shakur, who are in prison by Indiana, but are in states such as Virginia, right? So now she has an art piece that showcases the millions of prisoners that are in the system in this country. So this exhibit is on display at the Indy Art Center until October 5th, and is called On the Count. This project consisted of the creation of 2,000 ceramic torso-shaped forms that were each hand-formed and individually pierced 1,000 times by the artist, representing the almost 2 million people currently incarcerated in all 50 states. The exhibition also includes photo documentation of temporary installations and view of several detention sites throughout Indiana. It also coincides with the Prison Reimagined Presidential Portraits exhibit at the same location, which is curated by an incarcerated artist, Cadell Cavett. Over the weekend, there was a panel that featured Derek and Vernon T. Bateman We have talked about Vernon on the podcast quite a lot. And they were able to dialogue with the curator of Prison Reimagined and the founder of Death Penalty Action. So through these actions, they are encouraging everyone to reconsider any default assumptions they have about the criminal punishment system, how it functions, and the people who work and live within it. And to think about ways we can get involved in these conversations. The goal is to affect the attitudes and ultimately the policies that determine how we address crime in our country. So y'all, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Organizing, being an activist, whatever you want to call it, can look different for everyone. There's not one way to do it. So shout out to Gina Lee Robbins.
Yes, thank you to Gina Lee Robbins, Cadell Cavett, everybody at Prison Reimagined and the Indy Arts Center. It was a really incredible panel over the weekend, and Vernon and myself and the center very much appreciate, as well as the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, very much appreciate the opportunity to not only present, but also to build with you, and we look forward to building with you in the future. And that's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, give it a like, and listen for our next episode to drop. You can support us at support.pslindianapolis.org and by shopping at the Indianapolis Liberation Center website at indyliberationcenter.org/store. If you have a suggestion for the show, please email our producer at naptownpeoplesradio.com. The road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your community, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my co-host,
Dani Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We trying to create a movement. We got a chance to do something in Indiana that brothers like myself been talking about for the last 40 years. When I first became political and we was organized behind the walls in the 80s and 90s, some of the stuff that we doing now with the different programs and the different institutions that we have and things like the Indy Center is things that we used to talk about and dream about doing. And now we doing them. See what I'm saying? We doing it. And we got to keep that momentum going. And it's also generation. So as the next generation come up, you know what I'm saying, it's on y'all to take it to the next level and take it to the next stage.
Salute.